right, so Joseph Smith had an experience in the woods in New York. He actually had an experience with an extraterrestrial.
He probed me, and then different ones of them come in, and all of them probed me.
And I believe that it was the Asani people.
There are those who believe that life here began out there.
But only an account of this earth, and the inhabitants thereof give I unto you.
Earth is a grand experiment.
Far across the universe, with a council of gods, whose work and glory is to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man.
For behold, there are many worlds that have passed away by the word of my power, and there are many that now stand, and innumerable are they unto man.
For as man is, God once was, and as God is, man may become.
You wanted to learn how to integrate duality. You wanted to learn how to take light and dark and remove all judgment.
Some believe that infants who die here become eternal gods out there.
This is Infants on Thrones.
Baby steps.
You want someone to preach to?
The philosophies of men.
I like magical toys.
You want religion, do you?
Mingled with humor.
I don't believe in them.
There will be many willing to preach to you the philosophies of men mingled with humor.
We are evolving.
Baby steps.
You can buy anything in this world of money.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone.
All right, welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is episode 731. Return to Kolob, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, an interview with Reuben Langdon. Now, Reuben Langdon is an international stuntman, actor, filmmaker, and video game star who has worked on movies like Avatar, Pirates of the Caribbean, Power Rangers, Scott Pilgrim, and others. He's also the creator of the original docuseries Interviews with Extra-terrestrials, which you can find on the Gaia channel. Now, in 2013, Reuben co-produced the Citizens' Hearing on Disclosure. Now, that was an event that brought together 40 witnesses from 10 different countries to testify in front of 6 former members of U.S. Congress regarding evidence that the world is being visited by extraterrestrials. To date, it's the most concentrated body of evidence and testimony ever put into one place and one time on the extraterrestrial subject. So we talk about that a little bit today, and I hope that you enjoy today's interview. I'd really like to know what you think about this topic, actually, because we're going to be exploring quite a bit of it over the next several weeks. So, what do you think about UFOs, alien abductions, extra-dimensional channeling? You know, you put a peepstone in a hat and start dictating what it shows you. Who's to say that's not some extra-dimensional channeling right there? I don't know, what do you think? So come take a few minutes to fill out the new survey on extraterrestrial beliefs and add your voice to the mix. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview with Reuben Langdon.
Do you believe in aliens?
What do you mean, aliens?
Well, thank you so much for making time to do this, Reuben.
Sure.
I was looking on the Wikipedia page of yours as you're getting ready to come on and saw that you did some stunt work on Scott Pilgrim.
I did, yeah.
Were you one of Chris Evans' like body doubles in that scene?
Oh! Looks like you're seeing double.
Yeah, in that scene, I was the main one in the front there.
He's good, right? Sometimes I let him do the wide shots when I feel like getting blazed back in my Winnie. That's actually hilarious.
Cool. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I don't really have much structure for today. I really just want to get to know you and your story because I do 2 podcasts right now. The main one is called Infants on Thrones, and I've been doing it since 2012. And it's mainly it started out as a bunch of ex-Mormons that were just bitching about Mormonism. And then as I got more interested in spirituality and what's out there besides the religion that we were kicking the shit out of.
Yep.
I started coming across like channelers and talking with psychics and things like that. And early this year, probably in February, a friend of mine mentioned your series on Gaia, the interviews with Extra-terrestrials. And I watched that first one where you interviewed Wendy Kennedy twice, the first night, and then again the next morning, and then a fourth time the second night. I'm like, this is amazing.
So Wendy, welcome. Can you tell us, how did you get into the channeling process, and how did you come into contact with the beings known as the Pleiadians?
It was around 1994, and I started having some visions, and I didn't really know what they were. And so I started doing some research for that to see if it was past life related, because that was what my instinct was. And I came across channeling, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did it, but I just knew it was something that I was supposed to be doing.
And then when I reached out to you, you were so kind to email me back and take the time to be interviewed. So I'm really curious to know you, your background, what got you interested in this, and what have you learned? Because I'm still such a newbie to all of this. And probably just the one thing to let you know about me up front, I studied folklore and mythology from Indiana University, and my view of life is pretty much any kind of story that we ever hear is some kind of fiction. It's never 100% accurate or true. And so I kind of take everything with a little bit of grain of salt. But I'm super, super curious and very interested to know what you've learned. So.
Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it sounds like we're going to have a fun conversation. I was going to say, I'm the opposite, where I still take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I believe everything.
That's interesting that you would say, because as I was like anticipating what I was going to say, I was like, am I going to say that I don't believe anything, or am I going to say that I believe everything?
Right.
I could go like that curiosity that I have. The way that I believe everything is, I believe if somebody's telling me something, it's the way that they see things, and there's something to that. And it's because they know something I don't know, and I'm curious to know what it is. So yeah. So you believe everything that you hear.
Well, I was just having this conversation this morning with a very, someone who's going to be in my show in season 3, Beverly, who's a very, turns out, I didn't know this until I met her. Turns out she's a very powerful psychic, and she's just coming to these terms that she's got special gifts and is able to communicate with beings. She sort of was doing it all the time. She just didn't, I guess, talk about it publicly, and she thought she was kind of crazy. And now she's realizing that other people are having these conversations too. And so everything she would say to me, she sort of followed up with that. I know this sounds crazy. I'm like, look, you're talking to Mr. Crazy here. I've talked to so many people, and doing this for over 10 years now and having these conversations, I'm at the point where I will believe it all. And there's a famous quote from Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar, and from Bashar, that says all truths are true.
Yeah.
And I tend to lean towards that approach, because what it does is it keeps the door open. You're not shutting down anything. You're kind of letting people and letting beliefs and letting ideas sort of flourish and flow. And then you can choose which one resonates with you and how you're going to use it or you're not going to use it. Not by saying, well, that's crap, or that's whatever. That's, immediately you're shutting down any possibilities that idea, that belief, that story, that whatever it is could present itself in your life in some positive way. So you're immediately shutting that down if you're sort of blocking it off. And I'm not saying you're doing that, but I'm just saying that it's kind of the same thing, that we look at things through these different lenses. And where I'm at now, I was highly skeptical in my early days, and then these things would keep reoccurring, synchronicities and the same stories I'd hear over and over again from all these different people who didn't know each other. And that was sort of the idea of the show, was I was talking to all these different channelers and people channeling these beings from different realities, and the details and the language would be different. People would have different ways of expressing things, but when you got to the core of what they're trying to say, and the core messages seem to be kind of the same.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, well, if maybe that's where I need to focus, is on the bigger picture, take as much as I can in, and then let the people decide, let me decide what I like, and let other people decide what they like. And instead of shutting something down, and saying, well, that's crap, or that's garbage, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm sure there is a lot of garbage and crap out there. So there's a lot to sift through.
Yeah.
But somewhere, someplace, somehow, that crap is going to resonate with somebody, and it's going to create a positive outcome somewhere.
That's a nice way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, I think, because the podcast Infants on Thrones started as a reaction to people looking at the stories that they were told about the Mormon Church and going, oh, wait a second, this isn't what I was told. And actually, I've been the ideas of God and angels and any kind of supernatural thing has always come with some kind of control, like strings attached. And so I'm going to close myself off to that as a way of protecting myself. I think that's when I've, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I came across Abraham Hicks. The woman that I'm dating was listening to Abraham Hicks, and I'm like, what is this? And it didn't take me very long to get over that skeptical part and go, oh, I really like this. I like the core messages that are here. And then I started exploring some other things, eventually found you and your series on Gaia. So I like what I'm hearing you say about this openness. And I'm just trying to balance in my mind, as people are listening to this, if they're going to be on the side of the fence, it's like, no, I'm going to protect myself and close myself off, or no, I'm going to open myself up because there's going to be something positive that comes from it, even if I can't see it, which is what I think I heard you say.
In a sense, yeah. And you know, because there has been, over the years and millennia, through religion, there has been so much manipulation and taking advantage of people believing in certain things. So there is, I think, this cautionary knee-jerk reaction, especially when it comes to things that we can't see, and these esoteric ideas and in religion and this kind of thing. It's in our blood, because there's a lot of trauma that's happened over the centuries from having different beliefs or following certain cults, or different things have led to some really bad outcomes. So we, I think, in our DNA and genetically, we've put up barriers for protection, out of self-survival. So, which is great. But I think now we're at a point where we can say, look, when we can accept other people and where their beliefs are, and sort of lose the judgment on it, it opens us up to a whole other ball game of different types of teachings. And then, but it also sort of puts us in the position where we do need to be discerning, and to understand what's going to work for me may not work for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big lesson here is, there is no one gospel truth for anybody. I shouldn't say not anybody, but any group or nation or world or reality. There's so many different perspectives and ways of looking at things, and everybody's going to get something different out of it. Yeah. So by sort of releasing this fear of putting up a wall, simultaneously, you're also releasing your judgment of others and their explorations into other modalities. So that's the positive side, I think, of the sort of going down this path with an open mind and an open heart, is that you allow others to do the same.
I love that. So I want to get into some of these messages. You've touched on a few of them here, but I'd like to hear a little bit about your background. You mentioned that you used to be very skeptical. Were you religious when you were growing up at all? And then what was your transition getting into martial arts and what you've done with stunt work and acting?
Yeah, so I grew up in sort of a broken family, which is sort of normal now for I guess my generation. My dad was a hardcore Christian, sort of Baptist, born again Christian. He went that route. And during my younger years, when I was in my elementary school years, my mom divorced my dad because she was wanting to explore more metaphysical ideas. And she actually went into a full extreme, and she got caught up in a cult.
Wow.
And again, I was polarized between these two cults. I'll call them both cults, because one is, going to church every Sunday religiously, and, going through all the ceremonial aspects that has its own rituals and different things in its own right. And then my mom got caught up in this new age cult that thought the end of the world was coming. So I would spend time between the two, and just thinking, okay, all of you guys are crazy. I'm not into any of this stuff. And that's when I started just really becoming fascinated with martial arts, Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. And then the philosophy of Bruce Lee was what really started getting me in the martial art path, the martial way, which is very disciplined. And coming from, I had a fascination with Japanese culture and language. And that led me to Japan at the young age of 19 to study, not martial arts per se, but just to be in the culture and be in that world. And of course, everywhere I looked, there was martial arts schools and dojos that I could train in. So I thought, well, I'm here in the States. When I grew up in Atlanta, rural Atlanta, Georgia, and at the time there wasn't a whole lot of martial arts available to learn. So I just got together with friends, and we would go and drive an hour or two to some of the schools and just watch through the window. We never really subscribed to any specific martial art until I got to Japan. And my first martial art that I started was I saw a sign for free Aikido lessons. So I started taking Aikido. And then I realized at the time I was there, I kind of ended up working on an army base for visa reasons, just to get a visa. And then I realized that wasn't going to last very long, because I started butting heads with some of the military higher ups. And then, but then I found that I could get a visa from studying Aikido if I went to the main school and did it daily. And I was like, well, that's a win-win. I love martial arts and I love Aikido, and I can get a visa for doing that. That's awesome. So, and eventually I was training every day, and eventually I just moved closer to Tokyo and was sort of did that for a couple of years until I booked a role on a TV show out there. Kind of like Power Rangers, I'm in this Power Ranger world. And I was the first white guy to transform into, this superhero suit thing. And then I immediately fell in love with that job. I was like, wait, martial arts, acting, fighting, bad guys in rubber suits and becoming a superhero. This is awesome. Of course I want to do that for the rest of my life. And then during that time while I was living in Japan, I just continued my studies in philosophy and martial arts through Bruce Lee's teachings. He became even more of an influencer when I was there in Japan. And I started hanging out with like a lot of the Japanese martial art clubs that also idolized Bruce Lee. I didn't realize he was so big throughout the world, even in Japan. And then eventually made my way to Hong Kong out of the love for Hong Kong action cinema and obviously Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung. And then I started working in that industry pretty early on, and ended up working with Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung, my idols.
Oh, cool.
And actually ended up living with Sammo Hung in his backyard. And his Sammo Hung was back in the day, he was one of the more well-known martial art superstars. He had a TV show in early 2000s, 1999, 2000, called Martial Law. He's this heavy set guy, but can kick ass and do amazing things. And he actually was good friends with Bruce Lee when he was young. So to hear him talking about Bruce Lee at the dinner table, I remember just my jaw dropping and hearing this guy actually hung out with my biggest idol, and talk about the philosophies and different things. So that's sort of my path that got me into sort of martial arts philosophy, and then into action cinema. And then eventually I ended up working on films like Avatar, and Power Rangers, as I said, and then a lot of video game work. And had my own production company, doing video game production and a lot of motion capture work, just like with Avatar. And then I had an experience where I saw some UFOs in the middle of the day while I was working. It was during the period I was working on Avatar in 2007. And then I was just blown away and wanted to figure out what I saw. And then I started opening the door and looking up UFOs and different things. And then I realized that there was a whole other world that I was oblivious to. And then that's when, as my good friend Jeremy Corbell would say, that's when I started weaponizing my curiosity.
The 2019 footage obtained by filmmaker Jeremy Corbell.
My good friend Jeremy Corbell.
Jeremy Corbell, who last month released another video of an upside-down pyramid UFO hovering above a Navy destroyer.
This is part of a much larger series of events that we're going to be learning about.
And I know Jeremy from martial arts. We were good friends from the film and martial art world. He would get hired on some of the film productions I worked on, and he would teach me his. He was at the time, he was kind of way more well known then than now for martial arts, and now he's known as like the ET guy. But he was teaching quantum jiu-jitsu, and he had some really flashy
quantum jiu-jitsu. I've never heard that phrase before.
That was his like stamp on it.
Nice.
He was a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He had schools. He was teaching a lot of really well-known figures at the time who became more well-known in the MMA world. And he and I became buds, and then I found out that he was into UFOs, and then we started talking and chatting, and then eventually that led to meeting some influential people in the UFO world and going into creating and producing the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure.
The conclusion I've come to is incredibly wild, that those in charge have been successful in keeping secret the greatest story of mankind.
The evidence is overwhelming that Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft.
The CIA guy standing next to me says, we're confiscating all this data and you're all sworn to secrecy.
They've all been studying this. They have more data than I do.
So the government has dumped disinformation and misinformation into the field for decades. They've undermined research.
I have lost faith in representative government. I truly think we're in gridlock. It doesn't work, and so we need to make a change.
Creating and producing the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, which was a 5-day event in Washington, D.C., which now we're just now re-releasing. Every Friday, we're releasing a new episode. And it was a 20 episodes, over 32 hours of testimony. All these ex-military and government officials came together and testified in a mock congressional hearing in front of 6 former members of Congress and 1 senator to the fact that we're being engaged by an extraterrestrial presence. So a lot of really good, juicy military testimony and a lot of evidence-based stuff that people who really need that proof, it's there. And to see the transformation of the Congress members over the course of these 5 days and to see all this evidence just dumped on them, and then just, to hear their questions. It's quite a profound introduction into this world, and I call it the ABCs of ufology. So if anybody is just coming into this world, to really sit with that information.
Well, this is news to me.
Oh, okay.
I've kind of, I like I said, I've really just kind of dipped my toes in. I saw a friend of mine recommended Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I think. And in that one, he mentioned that there had been some disclosure with the government. But when I heard that, I wasn't familiar with it. That's what you're talking about here?
Yes. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. I think there was a couple quick clips. They did mention it. So Danny Sheehan, who was one of the prime, Stephen Greer, Danny Sheehan, they're both in the hearings. There was many witnesses, a lot of basically the who's who of ufology. Then a few of the guys have passed on. They were kind of up there in age. The late great Stanton Freeman, he was one of our witnesses. He's passed since. But yeah, it was a 5-day conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. And a mock congressional hearing. The idea was to trigger press and to trigger the media to take the issue seriously. They kind of just dabbed on it, but I think we were a little too early. The truth embargo.
When did this happen? Was it 2012?
2013.
2013.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was April, May 2013. And
can I back you up to 2007 when you had your UFO experience?
Sure.
I want to tell you mine.
Okay.
And it's hardly anything, but I was a teenager living in Tempe, Arizona. Had a friend over in the backyard. We're both laying down, looking up at the sky. We see these 5 lights come together in the sky into like one single light. And I turned to him, I'm like, did you see that? He's like, yeah, did you see that? And then we're watching this thing kind of like just hover. And then all 5 of them separated, and they went back exactly the same way that they did before. And that's really the only time I've ever seen anything like that. But I'm like, that was something. I don't know what that was.
So how does in Arizona for the 97 Phoenix Lights?
In 97, I was in Indiana at that point. But yeah, so I wasn't there. But I'm back in Arizona now, and I always keep my eyes peeled to the sky.
Yeah, it's a hot spot.
What was your experience like in 2007?
Mine was in the middle of the day, and I just saw these little. It wasn't very cool like what you just described. It was just seeing these little specks in the sky, and they kind of look like stars. If you could see stars in the middle of the day, if you could imagine what that looks like.
So bright light.
Bright white lights in the sky. It seemed they were as far away as kind of if stars were in the sky. So, but they were in a cluster, and they sort of appeared. I saw a couple, and then more appeared, and then there was about 30 or 40 or whatever. And then I just watched them for a good 45 minutes or so until they started disappearing one by one, until they were all gone. And that was enough. That's all I needed to really, because of the metaphysical world my mom was in, I had heard of the concept that we were being visited by ETs. She had mentioned that. I never really took her seriously. I just kind of laughed at the idea and was like, whatever, maybe, I wasn't denying it completely, but I wasn't really like, okay, show me the proof kind of thing. And then after that event, after that sighting, I was like, okay, I guess ETs are real. And I had thought that night that it was going to be all over the news, that this is, a global event that people saw across the continents. And to my surprise, at that time, there was nothing. And I was like, I know I wasn't hallucinating. Up until that point, I had never taken any hallucinogenic drugs, so or even really been drunk or had any alcohol in my system. So I was like this, I was a very hardcore martial artist and training diligently. That was sort of my life. So I was on a very straight as an arrow path. And at that time I was like, okay, something's different here. My reality just got jolted. So I really started looking into things from them.
Yeah. So do you have a sense now of, because again, like I said, I've just dipped my toes into this, so I really don't know a lot, but I've listened to mainly Wendy Kennedy stuff. Like I just, after I saw that interview with her, I've just been devouring her stuff and listening to what she talked about, these stellar connections and all of these different groups in the galaxy. And so do you have a sense of who or what those ETs were that you saw back in 2007?
Actually, no, I never really asked that question specifically. I do realize that, talking with enough experiencers and contactees, that a lot of these events happen so other people can't see them, or maybe we're just meant to see them at these specific times to activate us, to bring us into, to sort of get us on a path down a certain direction. And I know for sure if I had not seen those on that day, those objects, I would be on a very different path than I am on now. So that was a cornerstone, a tipping point in my direction of how I, my exploration. Because all of a sudden, at the time, my goal was like, I just want to make cool movies, and I was working on Avatar, and I was curious, and I guess my mind was already, I was starting to be massaged a little bit about the idea of what is reality. During the filming of Avatar, there was a lot of downtime because computers were crashing. Jim Cameron was really pushing the envelope when it came to the technological aspects of the motion capture and CGI and everything, and 3D. And so it was more often than not that we'd be in the middle of a scene and then the whole computer system would just crash. And then it was like, all right, talent, go back to your, holding cell or your holding area. And at the time, YouTube was just getting online. And there was, and I remember watching Stephen Greer's first disclosure project that happened in 2001. I didn't hear anything of it. This was like 2005, 6, up to 2007. And I was seeing all of this stuff on YouTube. YouTube was, in the early days, unlike the censorship now, it was quite an amazing tool to see videos, to access things that, in that time we'd have VHS tapes or DVDs from Netflix that we get through the mail. So we didn't have this streaming, this way to stream and take content and instantaneously deliver it from peer to peer. We didn't have that technology, or it was just getting started. So there was all kinds of amazing things like the Zeitgeist films.
I remember watching those. Yeah.
Loose Change. And these kind of films were really, I was just getting into them. And I was like, okay, maybe this is real, maybe this isn't. But whatever it is, definitely 9/11 was a big wake up call. Yeah. So I started having a different view of reality just from my exposure from that stuff. Simultaneously, I was also working on this film where I had, my homework was to learn how to be a Na'vi, and the Na'vi were all based on all of the indigenous cultures from around the world. We had in the holding rooms, we'd have pictures and artwork and of all kinds of different indigenous cultures, their dresses, their jewelry, how they some of their weaponry. And how they use some of that weaponry or tools for like gutting a fish and these kinds of things. So I had to learn how to be a Na'vi, and I had to study all these different cultures to do my job.
The Na'vi are the blue skinned creatures in Avatar.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
So here I was learning how to be a Na'vi, learning about our own indigenous cultures that they were based off of. And then actually interacting with, Jim would bring in different indigenous cultures into the set. We had Maori tribes, we had Native Americans, we even had some Peruvian folks come over, and talking with these people and learning about their different views of reality and different ways of seeing life. So I was getting primed and massaged, and then this event happens in 2007, which really was like a big slap in the face to get me on this path of really exploring and figuring out, okay, and really the driving force with me was I'm curious about all of these different beings and what's going on here, but and why they're here and all that. But really, it's I wanted to figure out the mechanics of reality. How does this work? How does this simulation? How does this game? There's many titles for this. How does this hologram? What are the mechanics of it? And then that's what got me into Nikola Tesla and his work, and quantum studies and different Niels Bohr and just really going down the rabbit hole, and more than just what the ETs were telling me.
Yeah.
Simultaneously doing so, I was doing indigenous medicine journeys with ayahuasca, San Pedro, and mushrooms, and then I was getting all these downloads, talking to the ETs through this channeling modalities. Then I'm going and hanging out with the indigenous, or I'm also hanging out with quantum researchers and trying to figure out, what is the quantum field, different states. And really kind of taking it all in, and that's where I've been going down.
This is the playground that I've stumbled into. You're describing here, Reuben. You've gone far deeper down that rabbit hole than I have, but I love everything that you're describing, and I just want you to dump it all on me. So what did you learn? What have you learned?
Oh, it's still learning. Let me point you some directions. Some of the people who I think are spot on right now from all my research. Robert Grant, who works with Nassim Haramein, and what he's discovering with math is phenomenal. And
now you mentioned Nassim Haramein. I've seen some of his episodes that he has on Gaia.
Okay,
I haven't finished all of them, and he's a theoretical physicist, but he's kind of outside of the academic structures.
He's a little hard guy to follow. I don't follow his work directly as much as his colleagues.
And it's Robert Grant was
Robert Grant.
Okay.
is one of his colleagues. Adam Apollo, who's been on the show, also works with Nassim and Robert, and is part of that team, the Resonance Foundation. They're doing some really breakthrough stuff when it comes to technologies, math. I think because of the view they have, they're kind of, as we open the show, talking about all truths are true, or having this open heart. They're sort of looking at the world that way, and then disregarding the stuff that doesn't fit and doesn't work. Yeah. So when it comes to scientific breakthroughs and mathematical formulas and these kinds of things, they're really on the cutting edge, I believe.
The thing I remember hearing about Nassim and what drove me to him in the first place, there's a Dr. Zach Bush. Are you familiar with that?
Loves it. Dr. Zach. Yeah. He's amazing.
A friend of mine sent me maybe 3 or 4 podcast interviews of him, and just loved that guy. And he mentioned Nassim in one of them, this thing about black holes, and where if you look really microscopically at I think the protons in an atom are all like mini black holes that are conduits for communication and intelligence being communicated. And such an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's what kind of put Nassim on the map in the mainstream scientific community, because he wrote a white paper. He sort of figured out the formula and the math behind it, and was able to sort of prove it to a certain extent, as far as we could, with theoretically and with the formulas. So the scientific community was sort of forced to take his out there ideas with a little more gravitas. He started having more gravitas in that world. I think most of the mainstream scientists out there still kind of laugh at his stuff, but that's mostly because there's been in the mainstream scientific community, there's been this dogma of following this certain paths that lead to the most funding. And
right.
and I think that's where Nassim was really following his heart and following science as opposed to following the numbers and who's going to pay him the most. So there's been a little bit of a separation there. And then again, in that dogma world, they're taught through the money to shun and exclude anybody who's not following this, this group. So it's become a very, like high school games, the way the scientific community is operating in these days, universities and stuff. So, but we're seeing a collapse in all of that as we should. Just I think natural evolution is going to put the human race and put us all in the direction of the most productive and least resistant path. And I think that's where like guys now like Nassim and these guys are going to really start to shine, because we've been sort of stifling them and it was for a long time, it was pain to go along a certain ideology or thought matrix, where now as that pain system, as the money itself is collapsing, so does the truth embargo, as I was saying earlier, which was on the what we've been dealing with the ET UFO stuff through 2013 till now. As that all of the money I think it comes down to money, and the reason we've had so many barriers and walls is because of what people place their value systems on. Over the years, this information is ancient information. The ETs have been visiting us forever. It's just now people are starting to value things differently than they used to. So now the old walls and the systems in place that kept that old system going are crumbling. So now we can put our attention somewhere else. We can put it into the idea that extraterrestrials or extra dimensional beings are visiting us. That there is a lot more to reality than just the physical, physical objects that we can hold and touch and go buy in the store and take home. That's part of this. I'd say the biggest through line, going back to the series, the biggest through line, the biggest teachings that I've learned and continue to learn through this whole journey is humanity is going through a major transformation. And this only comes around every 13,000 or 26,000 years. And this time around, it seems that we're going to go up to the next octave. I call it octave. It could be a lot of times in the show, we call it densities. We're moving from third density to fourth density. There was a time when we moved from fourth density to third density. There's a possibility we could stay in lower third density or upper third density or lower fourth, upper fourth. And densities is sort of a way to measure states of consciousness. And in the show, I talk about how, or we talk about with the other beings, how the chakra system, rainbows, frequencies, these are kind of ways to measure these densities. So first density correlates with the red or the lower chakra spectrum. It also is a measure of like rocks and minerals, and that consciousness is doesn't have the thought processes that we would see in ourselves or in other life. Second density would be more of the plants and animals. So we can actually see there's a cellular structures that are changing and responding to stimuli, responding to words, actions, thoughts, and that's more in the plant and animal realm. And then we, as third density beings, have been on the upper end of the third density, have been doing, coming from just, animalistic ways of doing things to now we're having this power to intellectualize and think and use tools. And then we're moving into this fourth density reality where we are now able to be more in touch with the emotional body and connect with each other through eventually telepathic communication, telepathy. We'll be able to communicate with other density realities, lower density realities, and see the trueness of what they are. So animals, honoring the animals and honoring plants, as well as the rocks and the minerals, but seeing consciousness in these different levels and what it is. And this is where our indigenous cultures had more of a connection to these different states of consciousness. They were able to connect with them. And this is why in a lot of the indigenous teachings, they talk about, the spirit of the bear or the wolf archetype, and honoring the land and giving the offerings. And there was a lot of interaction with spirit and in anything they did, from cooking to planting to even just walking into the forest. There was an awareness that they would walk with that we seem to be lacking or just remembering now. So they were. It was said that many indigenous sort of held a closer to a fourth density consciousness as long as they could on Earth, until the day that Earth would itself, in general, collectively move into that reality. And that's where that's what sort of the series focuses on. It seems like everybody, no matter what planetary system they're from or what dimensional realm these beings come from, they're all talking about this big shift that humanity is going through right now. So that's sort of the biggest takeaway, I would say, from the show.
Yeah. So with all of, I had noticed that earlier you had said extraterrestrial, and then you went, no, extra dimensional.
Right.
And I think you were kind of talking about the difference between the dimensions there, with the first density, second density, third, fourth.
There is a correlation. It's not the same. Dimensions is more of like a spatial awareness perspective. Densities is more of just a way to measure states of consciousness, which affects your dimensional spaceness awareness. So dimensions and densities are kind of two different states. They get confused all the time, depending on the channeler. Even someone who may not have studied or researched or have that vocabulary, they'll use this idea. They'll say we're in the third dimension and going into the fifth dimension. Yeah. Which, and then you're always like, well, what happened to the fourth? It is because we're actually in third density going to fourth density, but in a fourth density consciousness, you can see fifth dimensional space awareness. So there's all the terms and things, they get kind of,
they do
joggled up. And
the thing that I've heard about it that made the most sense to me was that the fourth dimension is time. And so when we're kind of going moment by moment, like you're flipping a slideshow, progressing in one direction, that's a third dimensional experience of being in a fourth dimensional place, but the times are just like a placeholder. And if you're in the fifth dimension, you can kind of like look back and see all of the time, that because was it that Einstein said something like this, all time exists all the time, or something like that. It's already all out there in the fabric of space-time. So from the fifth dimension, you could look back and see that. From the fourth dimension, where we're kind of operating from, we're kind of there, but we're experiencing it through this three-dimensional filter of existence, where we're going moment by moment forward in time. Only.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Okay. I got something.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So how has this helped you? Like we were talking about earlier at the beginning, being open and connecting with people rather than being closed off. How has this openness helped you in your life? Like where do you see the impact for you just personally?
First and foremost, it definitely keeps life interesting. There's all kinds of stuff, you're constantly being exposed to different ideas and different ways of seeing reality and different beings, and there's never a dull moment. So it can be overwhelming, and I've had to learn in the early days how to, again, put my own filters up, so I can navigate, so I don't go insane. Because to try to adopt every belief system there is, and try to navigate that, you will go insane. So so I think just the excitement of never a dull moment. I have not been bored one day since I started this journey. Since I saw those UFOs, I have not been bored a single day. That's the positive thing you have to look forward to. The negative downside is it can be overwhelming. The other things is the lessons I've learned from the teachings. For example, we started by being open, but let me just think of some of the other things that have truly made a difference in my life. So I guess coming down, when it also sort of boiling it all down to the essence, is what all this research is led me to understand is to recognize frequency and vibration. So there's a famous Nikola Tesla quote, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, which I believe now more than ever, absolutely 100% true. And we know this, even string theory talks about everything vibrating like a string. So if that's the case, if that's the essence of the universe, then try to recognize what that is in everything you're doing, and not just doing, but also what other people are doing, and to recognize the frequency and the vibration of everything. And when you can start to recognize what that is, you can start, that's your discerning. That's how what I use to discern different messages or belief systems. I'll try to look at the frequency and the vibration, boil it down to, okay, is this something that I want in my life? What is my ideal? What is the best idea of reality that I could possibly think of? And does this lead to that, or does this take away from that? And then if it takes away from that, by recognizing the vibration, if it takes away from that, then that's a road that I'm probably not going to go down. I can say, you know what, I recognize the frequency and vibration of this. Right now, it may be benevolent and it may seem okay, but I can see where it's going. So you know what, I don't need to go down that path, because I can recognize immediately from the vibration frequency. So no, thank you. So that I can cut those cords right away, and then just focus on the things that lead to that I feel, or I know, or I've already proven through my own journeys. Okay, this energy and this frequency and this vibration will lead to this aspect of what I think is what I believe in my reality is primo optimum, the best that I could possibly imagine. And then I just focus there.
So when you're talking about frequency and vibration, I'm translating that into emotions and thoughts, basically. Like take your temperature. How are you feeling right now? Like, what are the emotions? And because my route into this kind of took me through Dr. David Burns' cognitive distortions, cognitive behavioral therapy, learning the relationship between the thoughts that we think and the feelings that we feel. So that when I kind of came into this more like woo-woo kind of vibration energy stuff, I'm like, oh, we're talking about emotions and thoughts. I already got that. So I don't have to just dismiss that and be closed off to that right from the start. So what you're saying is that you monitor whatever you're doing at the time. How is it making you feel? What are the quality of the thoughts that you're thinking? Are they leading you into a place that's some place that you want to be, that's expanding? Or is it restricting, limiting, fearful, those kinds of things?
Yeah, pretty much. And also belief systems. So this has come through some of the channeling work that I've really resonate with, is that we are products of our thoughts, emotions and our beliefs. And then ultimately our actions is what really solidifies those into the physical world. So the beliefs being the bottom structure, of this. So because of what we believe, and this is why, going back again to how we opened the show with having an open mind and open heart, that's the structure, that's the foundation for how you respond with your thoughts and your emotions. Because one person can have a different belief structure, and they're going to get triggered from their thoughts and their beliefs in a completely different way than someone with two different belief structures.
Yeah.
So you can have the same thought, but with different beliefs, it's going to manifest in a different way. The frequency is going to shift.
Yeah.
So really being mindful of that belief structure, and I try not to solidify it too much, so it cuts my experiences off, my potential to experience positive things. What that also, I guess, could do is it opens me up to the negative side. But as long as I'm keeping check on it, then it keeps me in that positive flow.
I see what you're talking about as confirmation bias. Is just like whatever our beliefs and expectations are about the world, that's kind of what we're going to manufacture to match that. We're going to be blind to things that would be disconfirming to that. But if you're aware of it, if you're aware of your own confirmation biases, then you can, and you're aware of what you want. You've got the intention, I want to be more open.
Right.
And that leads you into those more open places.
It keeps the doors open. So you're not so hyper-focused on the one thing. And especially in this day and the age right now, where we're going through this major transformation, we're being inundated with negativity every minute. The smartphone's going off with all these alerts. This is happening, that's happening. COVID, gas prices.
Isn't it wonderful, Reuben?
Deep state, But
isn't it all of that negativity that's like that's the mechanism that's raising everybody up? That's kind of what's doing it.
Well, fear is a powerful tool, let me tell you. And I try not to make fear the motivation to take any actions, because I've noticed any actions made on fear, even though it may be the same action, it'll lead down a very nasty path, where I can take the same action, but if I can frame it into a positive frequency, I know that that's going to lead me down a positive path. Even though the beginning stages, it may be the exact same action. So, for example, right now, we have this idea of censorship. I mentioned, YouTube and whatnot. There's all this censorship going on. So we could be afraid that YouTube is, and many people are, that YouTube and these other platforms are going to take over the world through, controlling mechanisms and authority and centralization. So what do we got to do? Well, we have to build a decentralized internet, and a lot of people are doing that. Internet 3.0, they're doing that out of fear. A lot of people are doing it because of the innovation and all the cool stuff that's going to come from building a decentralized internet. It's going to keep, the centralized cronies from controlling the world, but that's kind of a byproduct. When you actually look at the real innovation and all the cool stuff that can be built through a decentralized DeFi web, it's way more exciting than I got to do this, otherwise I'm going to get cut off from the world. No, I'm going to do this because not of all the innovative things and all the ideas and all the innovation and cool stuff that I get to make, that everybody gets to take part in. And it's the same action, but see how many possibilities are opened from going down the path of, I want to do this because this is cool, to I'm going to do this because I'm afraid I'm going to lose, my freedoms.
Yeah.
For example, this is how I think all of this information, a lot of this information has helped me sort of shift how I navigate through reality, essentially.
Yeah. How are you doing on time, Reuben? We've been going for about an hour.
Oh, I'm good to go a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay. Because what I'd really like to get into, I've got a good friend named Tom who's really skeptical about all this stuff. He does this podcast with me, and he's going to be kicking himself at this point that I haven't asked you about any of the specifics about these aliens, because he's so interested in aliens.
Right.
And we've talked about them. We haven't really talked about them.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Who are some of these main players, and what are they doing? Why are they interested in us? Why haven't they just made themselves known if they could? Like, why is it so hush hush? Tell me about that.
Well, so here's where this is part of my journey that I've sort of actually gotten away from the specifics. I love talking specifics; it fascinates me, but I am not. I'm not going to. I don't say like this. There. I can go into Palladians and reptilians and the Andromedans and the Syrians and the all these different races, right? And they all have different attributes and archetypes and different things. But at the end of the day, what I challenge anybody who would like to challenge the idea of, I want to, these aliens, they're real or they're not, or it's all BS or it's real. Actually, no, that's it's both. And they're not really, there is no set. I think what happens is when we get so focused on who they are, why they're here, and all these different things, we actually lose the teachings, because again, we're setting ourselves up for disaster in a sense. You're like, well, then prove it to me. And if they're not going to show themselves that they're real, then I'm going to throw out all the good teachings and all the knowledge and all the stuff that the stuff that we just talked on this podcast. I think if you take any sane person, whether you believe in aliens or not, or anything extra dimensionals, if you just like look at what we talked about, there's some really good nuggets that I think most people would agree on.
Yeah.
When you're talking about frequency and vibration and like listen to what it is going down.
And they'd be asking themselves, why do I need to believe in aliens to believe I should pay attention to my thoughts and think good thoughts and happy feelings,
exactly. And these, I was able to get that information because I was curious, and there's many ways to get to that same exact information. We have philosophers like, Bruce Lee and Lao Tzu and Plato and all these people who kind of say the same things over the years, all these great thinkers and great teachers. And it's really just about what package do you prefer? And I happen to like ETs, it's interesting. I produced this event in 2013. There's enough evidence for me to say that it's a real phenomenon. And I've had enough crazy, wacky experiences in my life to verify that. Not everybody's going to have that, those experiences, and not everybody's going to be coming from that direction. So to disregard all the good teachings and all the good information, just because somebody hasn't had those experiences, it's like, what a shame. So, but I love talking about the details. So I'll totally go there. But
I just want to add to what you just said, Reuben. I share your concern about focusing on details too often, because I think all of these things are symbols. And anytime you focus too much on a symbol, then you forget what the thing is symbolizing, and you start moving towards dogma. And that's not anything that I'm ever interested in going into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess what I was just saying is kind of a disclaimer. You said it too. Yeah. So it's to, we're all on our own paths, and it really is a path of self-discovery, finding out what resonates, what doesn't. Yeah. And I have gotten some really good information from traveling down these different paths.
Yeah.
Especially the ET path. The information that I continue to receive and integrate into my day-to-day life, simple stuff. How do I go to the store? Where, how do I interact with a friend who may not be on the same page with the belief structure? Or how do I interact with a friend who is on the same page? What can we do? So how do we how do we navigate this reality in the best way we can and honor everybody else's journey? I think that's ultimately, no matter what belief system you subscribe to, whether you're talking to aliens or whether you're talking to God or Jesus or angels or even the devil, if you can just come out with that sort of mindset that we're all uniquely on our journey here. But since you asked, ultimately, so what I've come to find out is that we're being visited by many, many different civilizations, in addition to already the different energies that, we're in a cosmic soup here on planet Earth. It is many of the ETs talk about it as being an experiment of sorts, taking different life from different planetary systems, and sort of we're kind of like a terrarium. You just throw it all in and see what happens.
It's like the melting pot that people talk about. America, like America's this melting pot where you bring people from all around the world, and here you've got all this diversity that Earth is a grand experiment with thousands of genetic signatures from everywhere around the galaxy, the universe.
Exactly. So there's a keen interest for many ETs to check in, to come in from time to time and see how the experiment's going, and depending on the civilization, where they're from, what donation they made to this genetic experiment, they might be able to reap some of the benefits, whether it's from their own donation or from some other civilization. So they're constantly coming and going, taking the temperature, so to say. And humans are not the only genetic thing here. There's lots of different things here. So we're a big part of it. And there's a lot of curiosity and interest in how the human evolution is evolving through all this. But I think it's just a piece of a much greater planet Earth experiment that's been going on for millennia. So
what role does reincarnation play in all of this? Because that was the thing that really, like I told you when I watched your interview with Wendy on Gaia, that first episode of the series that you have.
My first question, I think.
it was your first question about reincarnation, and I just went, oh my gosh, I've never thought about the implications of reincarnation on the entire galaxy or the entire universe. I've always only thought about it in terms of Earth and like this linear thing, not that there would be some kind of a grand oversoul that's part of source energy that is incarnating into different beings and different systems and different dimensions everywhere all the time. And that just blew my mind. And I thought, I like that way of looking. That seems much more plausible than any of the other stories about reincarnation or aliens or anything that I've ever thought of before.
It connects the dots for sure. It connects the dots quite a bit. I think that perspective and adapting that perspective into my life has really helped me navigate. It unhooks you from a lot of people get hung up. There's in season 3, I'm actually Beverly, who I was talking to you about. She undergoes QHHT regression, which is a type of regression that Dolores Cannon came up with, and it really is good. I guess the main part about it is you go and you visit your different lives on this planet and on other planets. And I've had a couple regression sessions myself with it, and the images that show up are profound, and the emotions that come with that is pretty profound. So there's definitely something there. And I think this bigger view of looking at reincarnation from this sort of oversoul point of view really helps take the burden off, because so many people have these incredible lives, and then a lot of times they're shared, and then they're like, well, if I was Cleopatra, no, I was Cleopatra, no, well, no, maybe we all have some part of Cleopatra in this collective oversoul that we can tap into at any time. And it makes sense. And I use the analogy of, imagine if everybody on the planet was telepathic. So if that means if all humans were connected as some races are. And if I learned something, immediately everything I learned went, just like into the internet, went into the collective internet. So that not everybody needs to know that information right now, but if they needed to know that information, they just type in the right search term. And because Reuben learned that aspect or learned that thing, they would have access to it immediately, just like our internet is sort of a good example of that as well. But so imagine a life lived in a space-time moment, and all the lessons and everything. And then if we were all able to connect into all those lessons and all those things collectively, how would we navigate in our reality? And we'd probably navigate in a much different way than we are now, because we're so disconnected from that knowledge. Essentially, it's knowledge. And we might, just because we just choose to turn it off, so we're not looking at it right now. So we may navigate. So if you have, for example, if you're searching the internet and you're going through something and you don't type in the right search terms, you're going to find some other websites that maybe might not get you directly to what you need than if you typed in the right search terms. So in a sense, all of the information is there, all of the lifetimes, all of the different lifetimes from everybody it's there. All the information is there. This collective soup of consciousness, of oversouls, has access to any of those lives at any time. And we, as individuals going through our individual daily journey, well, maybe there's something I could access. Maybe there's a past life I can access, that when I do access it, because I'm in this individualized person thing now, when I access it, it may feel like that's me.
Yeah.
Because in a sense it's this collective soup of lives that we have all lived together. And when I feel into that now, I can say, oh, well, that's me. Well, that was probably also Bob, Joe, and your neighbors and everything. Sure. We're all tapping into these collective experiences, and we feel the ones that resonate with us for our personal journey now, that will help us move us along that personal journey. Yeah. So reincarnation, I think, is just us going into the Akash, in a sense, back into this greater soup of knowledge, and taking what we need for our personal journeys right now. And we can call it, I can say it's mine, and that's not wrong, but it's also yours. It's also his. It's also hers. And it's not, nobody can claim ownership over any of it, I think.
You mentioned earlier that you've had experiences with ayahuasca, and I have as well. And the first ayahuasca ceremony that I sat in, it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. It was before I had started coming across any of this stuff that we're talking about today. But I had this closed eye vision of all of these faces coming at me. And I was having this internal dialogue. Okay, why am I seeing this? What is this? And the response was, these are all different beings that you've been. These are all different incarnations that you've had. And I'm like, well, why are you showing me this? What does this have to do with me being right here, right now? And I said, you've got a lot of anger and judgment towards your parents, towards church leaders, teachers, people in your life who you feel like they've wronged you, and you've got wounds because of the way that they were. But what you don't understand is that these wounds that you have come from these other experiences as well. And so you can lighten up on your parents and your teachers and these other people. That's why we're showing you this right now. And
perfect.
I had forgotten that I had that experience. I wrote it down afterwards, and a few months ago I was reviewing those notes, and I saw it there, and it resonated so much with these things that I've heard in your interviews with people. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. So again, whether it's true or not, the way that it helped me in my life was like, okay, I can drop some judgment, which is, according to at least what Winnie Kennedy and I think probably others are saying, what is the whole purpose of all of this is to learn how to integrate those challenging emotions. Integration is dropping judgment. It's forgiving. It's being okay with everything that is. It's recognizing that everything is part of the whole, instead of the things that I like, I'll keep. The things I don't like, I'm going to cut them out and get rid of them from the fabric of the universe. How's that supposed to work?
Not gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's I'm always, as a now, filmmaker, storyteller, someone who's been in that world for a while now, I'm always looking for the best story.
Yeah.
And I tell people, so far I'm open, I'm keeping myself open. If something else comes along that is better, I will jump on it. But for now, the best story that I can find in a script form or in a fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, it seems these people and what they're saying and this channelings it's the best story my imagination could even go there.
I agree.
And the lessons that I'm learning from them, this whole idea of this reincarnation soup that we just talked about, seeing these different faces of different versions that also have traumatic experiences, some betrayal in different lives that's instilled in our not just our bodies, but in our energetic fields that need to be worked out. So this Lisa Royale in her books, the Golden Lake, they have this analogy of this lake, Golden Lake, that we all come from, and then we go back to the lake when we die. So if you can imagine this lake, and there's lots of different parts of the lake that still need healing, there's some pollution or some bad mojo in there. So when we come from that lake, there's certain aspects of us that still need some healing, so we can go through this life and in this reality, and we can try to cleanse and purify those energies as much as we can. So when it goes back to the lake, the next round of souls that incarnate somewhere else, there's a little less of that heavier energy, heavier density that's in there. That story, I think, is phenomenal in explaining things in this realm, and how does that pertain to this realm? How does that help us do what we're doing? Well, it explains a lot of the mechanics of how things work, or how they could work. And if that's not exactly how it is, well, it's helping me make the choices in my life, and like you said, in your life, that we don't have to be so judgmental. We can be easier on our parents and on our loved ones, and navigate life with a little more joy and a little less pain and suffering.
So I've recorded 4 hours worth of episodes with two of my friends. We started with your interview with Wendy Kennedy, and then another Wendy Kennedy thing. We've been talking about it, and the girl that we've been doing this with is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and this is the place where she gets stuck. She's not stuck because she still loves the stuff she's going forward, but she's like, I don't know that I can really look at this whole reincarnation thing as, well, there's a soul contract where their soul said, hey, I want to be a perpetrator. Hey, I'll be your victim. We'll make this agreement and we'll play this game. She's like, I still have a hard time really swallowing that completely. Like, maybe intellectually she gets it, but emotionally it's hard to go there.
Yeah.
What experiences have you had as you've interacted with people that have been channeling? And I'm assuming that these kinds of questions have come up before, and how have you found any kind of resolution for any of that? It's the suffering in the world, the problem of evil, that.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
It really comes down to the individual's journey. So it's hard to speak on behalf of anybody else, because I think each one of our journeys is so unique. And to generalize, which I'm going to do, but it's definitely a disservice to the individual's journey, because you can't really properly generalize suffering, right? That it's such a unique individual journey, and how we process the suffering, how we what happened in those moments. We can all agree, thankfully now most of us can agree, that any type of sexual abuse is suffering. There is a suffering that comes from it, and that it just shouldn't happen on this planet.
It's some pretty gross pollution in that Golden Lake that you were talking about.
Some gross pollution, exactly. Yeah. And we are in a time now where specifically that, the human trafficking, the sexual abuse is probably one of the biggest topics through this shift. One of the biggest things that we're working through collectively to release that type of stuff, to not release it in the sense that saying that it's not going to happen, but bring it to the surface. So, because it has been happening for so long, and way more than people even realize, that it needs to be addressed. Like, before we can move collectively, there's enough of us have to say enough is enough. And that's probably one of the most heavy, traumatic things that's left for the collective to deal with. But yeah, that it's hard to say, in that when someone has gone through such a traumatic event like that. The closest I've never had that type of trauma. The closest I've had is just being shot at point blank, and not getting shot. But having, bullets flying at you, and, out of the blue, and getting a bullet lodged in the back of my seat, and running and trying to escape the person, and the person still chasing you with a gun, and having that sort of traumatic experience. So that's probably the closest I can see from that. Then you're like, well, did I invite that in? Why did that happen? I was, just in the middle of the street, and what lessons do I have to learn from that? I think any experience is valid. Any and all experiences are valid. And the big thing I think we can ask ourselves is, what can I learn from that experience? So one, to validate the experience that it did happen. Second is to look at, instead of taking the victim role, which is sort of the normal knee-jerk reaction, is we do take a victim role, and no matter what experience it is, because it feels good to have people sympathize or empathize with you, to bring them over to your corner and say, that was shitty, and then everybody else saying, yeah, that was pretty shitty. It actually feels good for the victim, or for the person to have that camaraderie, and have people, you connect over something, because everybody can agree that it was shitty. So, but then to take it to the next step, okay, yes, that was shitty, but what did I learn? What can I learn from that experience? And what positive action can I take in my life that's going to help me not only move on from that experience, but move on just in reality in general? And that, taking that positive perspective and positive action based on that experience, is sometimes why that experience happened in the first place. Because we can take a negative action and wallow in the sorrow, and become more of a victim, and have other people come over to our camp, and then we're all singing Kumbaya with and hate and shame, and just keep going down that negative spiral. Or we can say, okay, what positive actions can I take from this experience? And that's going to be different and unique for each person. But that positive action could lead to some really extraordinary places. if taken, and it's going to again depend on the person and the thing. And then maybe down the road, 10 years down the road, you'll look back at that experience and like, oh my God, I'm so glad that happened because it's led me to where I am now. And I think that's kind of how the universe works, and why these things happen in this way. Eventually we'll get to a place where collective humanity won't need these negative suffering events to trigger us into a positive reality. But there is still, we're seeing it right now. We're seeing, as we were saying earlier, all this negative stuff is pushing us into a direction that we want to go. A lot of people don't need that, but a lot of people still do, because they're not going to take any type of positive action until some detrimental negative thing finally kicks them in the ass and says, this is the path you're supposed to be on. Get the hell over there. And enough is enough. And that's, I think, when some of these horrendous things happen, is it's just, we need them to happen to get us on the right path.
Yeah. And it gets tricky when we talk about needing to have them happen, or even wanting to have them happen. From that perspective of saying at the source energy level, where there's omniscience and omnipotence, there's also boredom, or whatever that would be, like all just bored of everything, because you know everything, you're not surprised by anything, you want to have new novel experiences, and so you create this three-dimensional experience where you don't remember, you think that you're a separate individual, and you can hurt people and harm people in ways that are just absolutely horrific. And I think why in the world would anything choose to do that? And then I kind of look at the way that we entertain ourselves now, like we can write any kinds of stories that we want to. I remember this is one of the big criticisms that a friend of mine had with Game of Thrones, why she would not watch Game of Thrones. She's like, it's a fantasy, you could have anything, why bake misogyny right into it? I'm like, well, okay. True. All of these horrible conflicts and stuff, we're still creating it in our minds, and storytelling is entertainment. Why wouldn't that be something that, if you could have the experience that isn't really a permanent experience, it's a temporary experience, but that's when it starts getting problematic, because a victim's going to say, oh, so you're telling me it wasn't real, it was just temporary, thanks a lot. And I'm like, okay, I should just shut up, I don't know what to say. And that's all we can do in that moment. I think all we can do is really just know that person is still processing, still on their journey, dealing with what they with the experience that they had, and to just to be, again, all that person is, and why I think we take the victim mode is because we're looking for camaraderie, we're looking for friendship, or we're looking for someone to understand. So when you're telling them that they didn't have the experience, or that they, the misery that they're feeling is, or that you wanted it, you asked for it, you were complicit in it, it was part of a soul contract, you agreed to it.
Right. And that goes in direct opposition of the frequency and vibration of that state. Right. So you're going to come up with some resistance for sure. So the best thing to do is I think Bashar said this too, that there's the difference between empathy and sympathy is empathy is you're actually, you're offering emotions, you're sort of empathizing, where you're seeing their perspective of how they see the world, and you're empathizing with them. But you're not necessarily going over to that state of mind. You're just simply, you can see it, you can acknowledge it, and you're offering them a hand. When you sympathize with someone, you're going full there, and you're not offering them any other direction out, because now you're wallowing the sorrow with them, and there's no hand out. You're just sitting there, and you're in it. And for the victim, both are going to feel good. So try to focus more on the empathy. Offer the hand if they want it. If not, I understand your perspective. The hand's there whenever you need it. I'm going to step back a little bit, because I cannot go into that land. I've been there. Those are the trenches. They do not feel good.
I think she wouldn't mind me telling you this story. I think you'll find this interesting. She told me this just today, actually, that she has suspected, or she's had like these dreams where she wakes up and she's paralyzed and just like really bad nightmares. And the woman who reads her Akashic record for her told her that it was alien abductions that was actually going on, and that she's being taken up to the ship, but not to be worried about it because it's part of like a soul contract. Anything that happens like that, she's agreed to.
Yeah.
And so she thought about that, and it's changed. It's taken the fear out of these experiences. And the last time she had one of these dreams, instead of being terrified by it, she was curious, and she started to see more. She like saw herself being like levitated up to a ship and up almost to the point where she was getting on it, and then it was too frightening for her and she dropped it. But so at least that perspective of a soul contract, and that these are your friends, helps take the sting out, helps take some of that fear out, and gets her a little bit more comfortable about what's going on, even if it is just sleep paralysis. She feels better about it.
Well, that was the motivation for the series. One of the major motivations was at the time I was producing the hearings, I was going to ET meetup groups for people who had been abducted, therapy groups. Though I have no conscious memory of anything like that, I was just so fascinated with these experiences these people were having. So I'd go and sit in on these therapy sessions.
Yeah.
And I'd talk to these people afterwards and then interview them in a sense. And Wendy used to come to, we'd have ET meetup groups at my office in the marina every once a month. And Wendy would come and she'd explain that she was, I didn't even know she was a channel at the time. She was explaining about her different experiences and being taken and stuff. And then she said in one of the meetings, she said, well, it's a soul contract. And it was like, when she said that, it was like a big light bulb went off in my head. And I'm like, what, soul contract? What is that? Tell me more. I want to know, what is that? And then she started explaining. I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Because at the time I couldn't logically figure out, well, if these aliens were so malevolent and so evil, why would they even bother putting these people back in their beds? They could just take them, do whatever they want, and like launch them out into space. Like, it's way easier to do that.
They put a little mint on their pillow afterwards. Like,
yeah,
thank you for playing
exactly.
Like this.
Exactly. Erasing the traumatic memories. And that seems to me that just was like, that's a lot of work for if you're a benevolent being and you don't care about anybody, why go through that trouble? So it did, like, I couldn't make sense. Like, a lot of the people were, especially in the fear-based UFO camps, were just like, they're all evil and they're all like demons and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense. I don't know. But then when Wendy said that, that's what piqued my curiosity. And then she said, yeah, I channel these beings called the Palladians. And I'm like, okay, we gotta, let's start getting that on film. And that was sort of the beginning of the journey. And 2014 actually was when the first interview with Wendy and Nora, I started with them because they would both come to my meetup groups. Daryl Anka would also come too. I didn't even know he was a channeler. He said, all these people came to my ET meetup groups and they would say, yeah, we've had some experiences, having no idea who they were or how deep they went. And then later discovering, oh my God, I was hanging around you guys, not even knowing what kind of stuff you guys were tapping into. So yeah, it definitely shifts it's the subtleness. It's just a slight perception or perspective switch that changes a really heavy thing to something a little bit lighter, and it doesn't have to be so heavy.
Yeah.
And if we could do that with everything in our life, just that slight little perspective shift.
Cool. Wow. Well, Reuben, thank you so much for giving me this last hour and a half of your time. I know I'm going to listen back to this and go, oh, I should have asked this. I should have asked this. But
we can always do it again.
Oh, I appreciate that. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
for-
So these
for sure.
these people that you mentioned, like you mentioned Wendy and Daryl and Nora, like are there places to go? I know that each one of them probably has their own website and their own things that they're doing, but are there places people who would be interested in meeting up locally with people where there would be resources they could find like-minded people?
Well, see, I used to hold these ET media meetup groups in my office, so
Yeah.
I kind of created my own. I would assume that there's MUFON has their local groups, which is the Mutual UFO Research something network. There are chapters, throughout America that people can go to, and just to talk about. That's more of on a sightings based thing. People will share.
It seems like the channelers, like it's kind of a different vibe than
it is.
Yeah,
it is. But that's, I think, where you might start to find some of the people who might be interested. If someone is interested in just finding out about the physical aspects of the ETs and reporting, then, like myself, it leads down a path eventually of going into what's asking the bigger questions. There's more to this than just flying saucers and shiny lights in the sky. So you might start there. I would look into yogic practices, breath work, indigenous teachings, native ceremonial, not necessarily ayahuasca per se, but there's, sweat lodges. I've noticed a lot of people who are into any of those things. If they're not fully into the ET channeling thing yet, they're probably open-minded enough to, if you were to start something and have these conversations, then especially now with all that's happening on the planet right now, that would be a good place to find some people to maybe start one of those groups.
Yeah. What is happening on the planet right now? Are there like big things? Because I've seen some tweets from you come by, like, big things are happening. I never really go and investigate what it is, but
well, the biggest thing is the biggest thing is the shift in the consciousness, right? And what is that? That's so generic. That's everything. But what I see happening is a total revamping of our monetary system. And this is my personal belief based on research, is that COVID is a smokescreen for a global financial reset that has been planned for quite some time, and it's sort of started to be pushed a little bit now. We're starting to see that, but I don't think it's going according to plan. And to the plan for certain groups, which is beneficial for the human race. And we're seeing through the crypto currency wave, we're seeing a big move into decentralized finance, decentralized internet, decentralized everything, which I do think is sort of, when you look at the frequency and vibration of that energy, that is where we're headed, I think, as a transitionary monetary system to eventually not needing money at all. Because people are making fun of, what is Bitcoin? It's just nothing. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so is the dollar, but at least it's even less tangible than a dollar, because it's just a digital thing, which, essentially the dollar is too, but people, go from that they like that physical, having the physical money in their hand. So we're shifting very rapidly from a physical to a non-physical universe. And this is the big evolutionary jump that we're going to see, is this is the third density, the fourth density shift, is things are going to become less and less physical, which makes it easier and easier to manifest. And what's very exciting is now when we get an idea, we can implement and execute it, and it can become manifest in our reality in a much quicker way, form and fashion, because we don't have all the heavy density, rocks and minerals and heavy metals that we have to mold and form and do this and to make anything happen in this reality. We can build things now with new ideas and new ways, because it doesn't have to be so physically bound to the universe. And
I can imagine a time, Reuben, as I'm listening to you talk about this, thinking about just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, like how the internet has just changed things so much. And now we've got these smartphones in the palm of our hand. It won't be too much longer before they're implant, like some kind of a microchip. I think Elon Musk is even working on something like that now. And so you talk about like instantaneous manifestation, which I've heard Wendy and Nora talk about, is the fifth dimensional experience of reality. That could be everybody's brain is just directly connected to a decentralized internet where our lives become a mixture of not only what we're experiencing in the 3D world, but this world of thoughts, which would be like some kind, wasn't there like some kind of gaming thing called like Half-Life or something like that, where you create your avatar and you can go and you do whatever you want. Like just imagine if that was what we were always plugged into. I don't know. It'd be kind of like WALL-E, and just thinking about all this science fiction stuff. It really seems like that's the direction that we're going. I think even Yuval Harari, in his follow-up to the book Sapiens, Homo Deus, talked about that a little bit. I don't know if you're familiar with that book at all, but so I can, it might seem kind of crazy, but 20 years ago, 30 years ago, thinking about the internet would have been crazy too.
The other thing that so many people are forgetting too, is the way we perceive reality now is just the human race. So again, going into disclosure, which is happening now, every week we're getting new bombshells released through the government, or, through my friend Jeremy, who's doing a lot of the big leaks and stuff. And the news is reporting on it. The news is accepting it, which then people who still buy into the news and need that confirmation are starting to buy into it. So the belief structure for aliens being real now is moving very rapidly into having it as a belief structure. And once that structure is that foundation is there, again, the possibilities, it opens us up to a whole new realm of different possibilities, because once you acknowledge that ETs are real and that's a possibility in your belief structure, now it's opening the door to Pandora's box in a positive way, because now if you even allow that into your belief structure, that aliens exist and that they could be visiting us right now, well, now that means that's an infinite possibility of possibilities of beings from other dimensional realities, doesn't matter where they're from, can come in and give us answers to a lot of our problems. And which I do in the show all the time, but just collectively think of the idea of the collective human race being open to exchange, energy exchange, technological exchange, ways of doing things. Already we're coming up with all this innovation through cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies, and that's innovating and changing the way we're going to do things quite rapidly. But what if there were even better ideas and things, free energy devices, and different kinds of things that could really help us here on Earth? But the only way to have them here on Earth is you got to believe in aliens, because the aliens are going to come and talk to you and share with you these technologies until you start believing them.
Or the collective consciousness has to raise to a point where instantaneous manifestation doesn't mean I'm pissed at everybody right now and I'm going to destroy them with my thoughts.
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the reasons we don't have free energy technology just yet, is because we're not responsible enough as a collective to hold that kind of power. And this has been told to me through some military channels, is that's one of the main reasons why the Navy and other agencies keep a lot of the technology secret. Is it's just not just like a dirty nuke bomb, but if everybody had access to some of these technologies, and if there's a certain amount of responsible thoughts and emotions that come with these technologies. So that's another reason why they're not here just yet. But I think one thing leads to another. For me, the idea of massaging my belief system to believe in aliens was sort of the first step that then said, okay, if that's real, what else? If that's real, what else? If that's real, and then you start going down or up that ladder, and then you get to a point where you then evolve emotionally, spiritually, to the point where you can now have, some great device or power or something, and you're not going to use it in a negative way. You're going to use it for the benefit of humanity. So that's where, again, the idea of just the idea of ETs being real themselves in a non-fear-based way could really help our evolution. And it goes back again to this non-judgment of other people's beliefs and realities. It's the ultimate race card, so to say. We have all this racial tension that's going on right now, and again, I think these are just old wounds that certain people are putting fires on but they need to be stoked to get it all out of our system, because if you have a problem with your neighbor's skin color, just wait till we get some of these, feline, blue, avian based, reptilian beings showing up in our front lawns, and you're gonna get your shotgun. Yeah, right. Okay. So, or hovering through your window or your door. So we have a lot to work through till we get to that point where we can, allow the 10-foot tall mantis being come into our room without any judgment or fear, and acceptance of what they have to offer us. Or not, and it's like, no mantises in my room, no thank you, and then you do you make your space and you tell the universe, no mantises in my room, please. For me, I welcome them. I guess that's why they show up. So that's we'll say that for part 2.
Have you really have seen the 10-foot tall mantises in your room?
I felt them in the room. I shouldn't say I could fully see them, but I've had telepathic communication from them.
Well, I'll take you up on that part too if you're serious about it, and I'll bring in especially Shalise, who I referred to earlier. Okay. She really wanted to be on this with you, but she couldn't today. So cool. That'd be cool to do another one.
Awesome, very cool, very cool.
Well, thank you once again,
Reuben.
Great,
thanks for having me, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Reuben. It was really nice to meet you. I'll stay in touch.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Put down the weapons that you use against yourself. You don't need them anymore.
Hey there. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I have more to say about this topic, and I'm going to do that with a follow-up behind-the-scenes sharing time episode on Patreon. So, if you're in a position where you can throw me a few dollars each month to support the work that I put into creating this podcast, please come and support me on Patreon, where you'll also get access to additional content. Did you know that I also create sharing time episodes that are available only to Patreon subscribers? I've been doing that for a few years, so there's a lot of content there that you can have access to. So please come and support this podcast if you can. I greatly appreciate it.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew. Ryan.
Carol.
Keith.
Ashley. And I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did.
Anyone for the closing prayer?
And don't forget to head over to the website to fill out the new survey.
My worst crime is an inside job. Dark thoughts taking over like an inside mob. I tune into the scene between the eyes and take a breath.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
I sit still and watch the thoughts float past me. Never mind the future, never mind what the past be. I like to jump and let the universe catch me. 3, 4, watch the beauty blow past me. I keep my pockets light, destination in sight. Keep my My actions elevated to compassionate heights. I'm walking past the fight, laying down on Sunday night, choosing love when I pick up this night.